I'm not understanding you. I'm listening to you, but I can't understand what you said.
Okay. Do you want to know?
Yes, I'm ready to begin now.
Okay. What is the concept of utilitarianism?
I'm sorry, the sound is not very good, and I'm having trouble understanding you.
What is the concept of utilitarianism?
The concept of utilitarianism is the ethical view that the right thing to do is the action that will have the best consequences for everyone affected by that action, both in the immediate short-term future and in the longer term as well.
Okay. Ask, what is the relevance of practical ethics, considering the world's different values and visions? To adopt practical ethics in general cases?
Well, practical ethics is the field in which we discuss what we ought to do in a wide range of practical situations. In fact, perhaps in all possible situations, as far as we can discuss those questions. Of course, people do come to practical ethics with different views, but those of us who do practical ethics believe that we can advance a rational discussion of these questions, that it is possible to reason about ethical issues, and that by discussing them and reasoning about them, we will make progress. We will get to better ethical conclusions than we would if we did not reason about ethical questions.
Okay. One more question. Given the various ways of acting and experiencing, what would be the dimensions of practical ethics?
I'm not sure that I really understand what you're asking now. As I said, practical ethics is concerned with all kinds of practical
issues. Given the various acting and experiencing, what would be the dimensions of practical ethics?
Yes, I understand the words, but I don't understand what they mean. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I mean, I can only repeat what I just said. If you're asking about the dimensions of practical ethics, it is completely comprehensive. It covers all possible ethical questions.
Okay. What is the philosophical relevance of distinction between a human being and a person?
The term person is an ancient one, which comes from Latin, from the Latin persona, where originally it stood for a role that an actor played in a play. And then subsequently it was taken up by very early Christian theologians in their discussions of the doctrine of the Trinity. Of course, the Christian doctrine of the Trinity holds that there are three persons, that God is three persons. Only one of those persons is a human being. God the Father and the Holy Spirit are clearly not human beings, but according to Christian theologians, they are persons. So what that shows is that there is a conceptual difference between a person and later philosophers like John Locke suggested that the term person should be used to refer to a rational thinking being, being with a sense of themselves, living over time. And I think that's a useful.
Yes.
And if we use the person to refer to a living thinking being, then clearly some members of the human species are not persons. Those, for example, with very severe brain damage, so that they are not self-aware or not thinking of themselves as existing over time. And some non-human animals, for example, chimpanzees, do appear to be persons. They do appear to be able to think of themselves over time and to be self-aware. So that is why the term person is not the same as the term human being.
Okay, Professor. What is the value of human life?
I don't think one can ask in general what the value of human life is. The value of human life varies with the circumstances of that life. For example, we have babies born with a condition called anencephaly. That essentially means no brain. They are not brain dead. They can, but they can never be conscious at all. Such a baby, for example, would never recognize his or her mother. Although that is a human life, undoubtedly that being is a member of the species Homo sapien and is alive. I don't think there is any life without consciousness. I think there is no value. On the other hand, with most human beings, of course, if they have a reasonable quality of life, the value of their life is immense. It means everything to them in terms of everything that they can experience. So we have to always look at the condition of the human life. We cannot simply say that human life in itself is of great value. It is only of great value when it has a certain minimal quality.
Okay. Is there a special value in the life of a rational and self-conscious being as opposed to an irrational being?
I don't think that the fact that a being is rational necessarily means that that being's life has greater value than the life of a being who is not rational. What I think is that when you have a rational being who is capable of reflecting on their own life, then they are the one who should be making the decision as to whether they wish to go on living or not. So a rational being can judge whether he or she wants to go on living. And in some circumstances, for instance, if they are terminally ill and in great pain, they may ask not to go on living. They may ask their doctor for assistance in dying sooner rather than later. So that suggests that they judge that their continued life in those circumstances is not of value. On the other hand, a non-rational being is not capable of making such a judgment. They're not capable of thinking about the issue of whether to go on living or not. But that doesn't mean that their life is not of value, because they may experience pleasure and then their life may be of value, or they may be experiencing a lot of pain, in which case their life would not be of value, would be of negative value. The important difference between rational and non-rational beings is in the question of who makes the decision as to whether it is better for them to continue to live or not.
What is wrong about killing?
Well, there's not always something wrong about killing. There are cases where killing is the right thing to do. For example, the case I just mentioned of a patient who is terminally ill, who is rational and understands his or her situation clearly and asks for help in dying from the doctor. Killing that patient on that patient's request may be the right thing to do. But if we are talking about somebody who wants to go on living, then to kill them is to violate their autonomy and to go against their very strong preferences. And that is normally the wrong thing to do. So again, what is wrong with killing will depend on whether the being whose life is being taken wants to continue to live, and also on the quality of their life. In the case of a non-rational being who can't, killing will be wrong if it deprives the being of a good life that they could have continued to have.
Okay. Are abortion and euthanasia morally justifiable?
I think that both abortion and euthanasia can be morally justifiable. Yes. With the case of abortion, I think that essentially abortion should be the choice of the pregnant woman if she does not wish to be pregnant. And if she has an abortion, at least if she has the abortion early enough in pregnancy so that the fetus is not capable of feeling pain, which would mean probably something like 5 months of pregnancy, then I think that should be entirely her choice. I don't think the fetus is at that stage the kind of being who is aware of anything, and I don't think it is wrong to end the life of the fetus when the fetus is not capable of feeling pain. After that, it becomes a more serious question, I suppose, as to how important the woman's reasons for abortion might be. In the case of euthanasia, as I already said in response to a previous question, if that is something the patient requests, then I think that is justifiable under certain safeguards of the kind that exist in countries that have legalized physician assistance in dying, like Canada, the state of California, and the state of Oregon in the United States, and Belgium and the Netherlands in Europe. I think that is justifiable on the patient's request.
What are the main liberal and conservative arguments about abortion and euthanasia?
Well, I think I've just given you the liberal view on abortion and euthanasia. It's not the only view. There are other views that liberals argue, but essentially, I think they would argue that the woman's choice to be pregnant, to have a child, should override any supposed right to life of the embryo or fetus. And since I don't think the embryo or fetus has a right to life, I think that that is normally a reasonable decision. Conservatives will argue that the embryo is a human being from the moment of conception, and therefore has the same right to life as any other human being. But I think that that is a mistake. I don't think you get a right to life simply by being a member of a particular species. I think that rather you get a right to life because of the capacities that you have at a particular time, and a number of other questions, including the quality of the life that you will have. I suppose even larger questions about the desirability of adding to the population in the place where you're living might also be relevant. I think it's a mistake to assume that just because a being is a member of the species Homo sapien, it is wrong to prevent that being from continuing to live.
Okay. Is involuntary euthanasia morally correct? Is it comparable to murder?
If by involuntary euthanasia we mean euthanasia against the will of a patient who is capable of choosing whether to live or die, then involuntary euthanasia is, I think, never justifiable. It's almost a contradiction in terms. On the other hand, I think what I would call non-voluntary euthanasia is sometimes justifiable. Non-voluntary euthanasia is euthanasia where of making a decision or expressing a wish as to you there again?
Hello?
Hello?
Okay. Stop connection. Okay.
Yes, I'm here.
I ask you, is killing an adult morally worse than killing a child?
I don't think in general there's a distinction between the moral seriousness of killing an adult and a child. Both of them can either be justified if it is at the request of the adult, and if it is how old the child is we're talking about, but it may be if the child is not capable of making choices, if the child is very young, at the request of the parents, and after reviewing the prospects of a child, if we're talking about a very severely disabled infant with a very poor prognosis for having a worthwhile or meaningful life, both of these can be justified. It's not a question of whether it is an adult or a child. It's a question of the wishes of and of the prospects of reasonable quality of life for the child.
Okay, Professor. The last question. What is the moral relevance of killing, active euthanasia, and letting die, passive euthanasia? In the end, what the result? Be the same?
I'm sorry, I didn't really understand. What are you asking about? What is the same?
Moral relevance of killing, euthanasia activa, and letting die. Yeah.
Oh, it's active and passive euthanasia. Okay.
Yes.
Well, yes, I think that very often people draw a big distinction between whether you bring about a death by letting someone, by withdrawing medical treatment. For example, you have a very severely disabled infant and you think the prospects of that infant are very poor, and so the doctors take the baby off the respirator, knowing that the baby is not going to be able to breathe. Often people think that that is permissible, but that it would not be permissible to do something more active, such as giving the baby a lethal injection. But I think that that's a mistake. I think that in both cases, you are doing something that you know and fully intend will bring about the death of the infant. And whether that death comes through withdrawing or through a lethal injection, in my view, is not morally relevant. It may psychologically be perceived as relevant. There may be some differences in the suffering. In fact, there may be more suffering if you withdraw the baby from the respirator than if you give the baby a lethal injection. So those factors are relevant. But I think to think that there is somehow a big moral distinction between bringing about the death of a patient by withdrawing a respirator rather than giving a lethal injection, I think it's a mistake to think that there is such a big moral difference.
Yes, because in the end, it's the death of patients.
Well, exactly. In the end, you're bringing about the death of the patient, of the human being, and you know that you're doing that, you're intending to do that. So I think that to draw a sharp moral line between the two is not correct.
Okay, Professor. One more question. To think then euthanasia applied in terminal patients would lead to the exterminations of invalids, genocidal practice?
Again, I'm not sure that I quite understand the question, but if you're trying to draw a connection between providing voluntary euthanasia for a patient who requests it and some kind of genocide, such as what the Nazis carried out, I just don't think that there is any connection at all. And we have now had 30 years experience of voluntary euthanasia in the Netherlands. We've had nearly 20 years experience of physician-assisted dying in the state of Oregon in the United States, and varying periods in other jurisdictions as well. And there is absolutely no sign that this is leading to genocide or to any killing of people who are unwanted or undesirable. So I think that's really spurious argument to attack euthanasia in its modern form as in some way connected with genocide just isn't right.
To conclude, are you in favor of a right to die with dignity? In which terms?
Am I in favor of a right to die? Is that what you're asking?
Are you in, yes, are you in a favor of to die with dignity?
Well, I'm in favor of people dying in the way they choose. If somebody wishes to die with dignity, and I think that they should have that option. If somebody does not see it as important to die with dignity and they want to live as long as they can, then subject to whatever medical resources are available, I think they should be able to go on living. So I think that talk of a right to die with dignity should really be replaced with talk of allowing patients to choose for themselves how they wish to die.
Okay, Professor. We finished the interview now.
Okay.
I'd like to for your considerations, right? And when published the interview, I remind you to your mail the link.
Okay, please do it. I will send it out on Twitter and Facebook so that more people can watch it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Bye bye.
Bye then. Bye.